Hi, welcome back to Perfect Purple Conversations. My name's Otis, and today I'm going to talk about my 3 favourite reggae drummers. Please remember to like and subscribe, and more importantly, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments and let me know your opinions on what you've watched today. Let's go. As some of you may know, I'm a bass player. And I enjoy playing bass. I actually enjoy it. And someone once said to me, as a bass player, you are only as good as your drummer, or as good as your drummer allows you to be. And what they meant was, no matter how good you are, how many chops you've learned, how much skill you have as a bass player, if you don't have a true understanding with your drummer in that moment, you will not sound good. Your job as a bass player is to understand the unique DNA and fingerprint of your drummer. What makes them special? What makes them play the way they play? Do they play in front of the beat, behind the beat, on the beat? Are they good with tempo management? How do they understand groove, swing, feel? How do they roll? Can you anticipate what they're going to do next? If you can get a grasp on these things as a bass player, you will have a better connection and relationship with your drummer and therefore make a better rhythm section. So as a bass player, there are certain qualities I look for in a drummer. When I meet a drummer for the first time and we first start jamming, start playing, I will spend the first 5 or 10 minutes standing playing, watching that drummer, every move. How do they move? How do they dance when they play? How do they anticipate music? How do they interpret what the singer's doing? How do they react with me? What do they do? What's their makeup? What is their DNA? What's the fingerprint of this drummer? And it takes 5 to 10 minutes, then you start to get a feel for the personality and the character of this drummer, and then you can start to build from there. But that is important for me to understand how a drummer works, for me to get the best out of that relationship. So this video is about drummers, and I'm going to talk to you about my 3 favorite drummers and what qualities they have that I like to see in other drummers that I work with. Enjoy. So my 3rd favorite reggae drummer, Carlton Barrett. Born in Jamaica in 1950, most famous work is with Bob Marley and the Wailers. Synonymous with the one-drop style, though not the creator or originator of this style. That goes to Winston Grennan, who you can hear on the Toots and Jimmy Cliff recordings, which predate the Wailers. Nevertheless, Carlton Barrett took this style and made it his own. And there's probably not many, if any, drummers that can execute this style in the way that he does. And for that reason, he is the go-to example of how to play one-drop reggae. Now, there's one drop and there's one drop. What I mean by that is you could have a cheese sandwich and you can have a cheese sandwich. Yeah, you can have one that's just got cheese and bread, and then one that's got cheese, pickle, salad, granary bread, and all sorts. And the two by name are the same, but in reality are 2 completely different things. Yeah, so you got one drop and then you've got Carlton Barrett's one drop, and it's fully seasoned, full fat, fully flavored one drop. You tell that food. But anyway, so what makes Carlton Barrett special? Well, I don't believe he was classically trained. Certainly his technique is not one that would be taught if you went to a drum school or drum lessons. The way he sat, the way he rocked while he was playing. Sometimes he would roll with one hand, which would never be taught as a technique, but that's what made his sound and that's what made his style. Also, what's interesting about Carlton Barrett is he uses his crash cymbal. In fact, he doesn't use it as a crash. It's more as just as a punctuation. So he'll play his cymbal in the middle of a measure and never at the end of a roll. So he will roll and then finish on the snare or the bass drum, but never on the crash, which 90% of reggae drummers will do. That's part of his sound. Another thing I like about Carlton Barrett is his hi-hat punctuation. A lot of drummers will play the hi-hat pattern, but if you listen to most of Carlton Barrett's patterns, Carlton Barrett recordings, he will play along with the guitar chop as well as his hi-hat pattern, giving an extra dimension and pulse and character to the hi-hat on its own. And that's without the drums, the rest of the drums being added into that. And that's something very signature to Carlton Barrett's sound. His snare drum, so he was famous for using a Ludwig Superphonic, where the snare drum, the skin was tuned within an inch of its life, higher than a timbali, really high, bright sound. And that would be his snare drum. So he'd give the impression that he was rolling off a timbali all the time, but he wasn't. He was rolling off of his snare. The pitch of it was unique. I'd say it's unique. And a lot of drummers these days are now reverted back to that high snare sound, which was kind of pioneered by Carlton Barrett. His mixture of funk and reggae. If you listen to tunes like Them Bellyful and Roadblock, the intros are straight funk. But in terms of groove and playing with feel, there's not many better. He was able to bring his personality through into his music and express himself through his groove. And he's one of those drummers that dances while they play. So you'll see him rocking when he's playing the drums. He's actually enjoying what he's doing. He's expressing himself through his playing. And that makes him, as a bass player, someone I can relate to, or a drummer, a style I can relate to. One of the best there's ever been. Okay, number 2. Sly Dunbar. Born in Jamaica in 1952, along with his partner in crime, Robbie Shakespeare, have played with almost everyone. From Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Mighty Diamonds, Black Uhuru, Taxi Gang, Iny Kamoze, Grace Jones, Joe Cocker, Rolling Stones. The list just goes on and on. Unlike Carlton Barrett, Sly didn't rely on the one drop throughout his career and was constantly innovating. The first thing I would say that I enjoy and like about Sly Dunbar and what I look for in drummers, he did and does and would create a new drum pattern for every song he played. So just like there's a expectation that a reggae bass player will create a new bass line for a song, nowadays drummers will fall back into a toolbox of typical drum patterns, whereas Sly, and this was true of the time in the 70s, drummers were also expected to create a new unique pattern for that song, which Sly always did. In fact, there are many examples where he would create a new pattern for the song, for the verse, and a secondary pattern for the chorus. So always constantly innovating. And when you've got a drummer that is as creative as that, when you're a bass player, you can only be creative as well, or it just makes your life easier to interact and play with a drummer that creative. So in contrast to Carlton Barrett, Sly Dunbar is very metronomic. And what I mean by that, his tempo management was spot on. So he'd start at one tempo and he'd end the song at the same tempo. Almost machine-like in his precision. He would decide what he wanted to play and that would be it. It would be steady, no surprises. Again, as a bass player, sometimes that's also what you want. You want to know what your drummer's going to do. Be able to anticipate what your drummer's going to play. Unlike Carlton Barrett, his crashes would come at the end of the drum roll. One of the pioneers of the rocker style, which would be like a 4 to the floor bass drum with a snare slap instead of a side stick. And this style came out of a time when Sly was touring with the Rolling Stones, or touring with Peter Tosh, supporting the Rolling Stones. They were playing in these big venues, in these big arenas and stadiums. And what Sly said was that when he played the one drop, that sound wouldn't carry through those big arenas. So he had to develop a sound that was stronger and bigger using the snare rather than the side stick. And that's where the rocker sound came from. In terms of technique, I don't know Sly's background, but he is a lot more classical in his technique. So you can see that in his skill. So his cross-hand paradiddles, which he's famous for, is now something that drummers copy all around the world. So Sly always kept up with innovation, always on the cutting edge, whether that be early adoption of the Sin drum, which became part of his unique sound. So at a time in the mid-80s when the drum machine became popular, a lot of drummers didn't get work, but Sly didn't make that be a thing. He didn't let that stop him. He embraced the drum machine and created a whole new sound for early 90s dancehall music. A trend-setting, innovative, skillful drummer. And lastly, my favorite reggae drummer, Leroy Horsemouth Wallace. Now, some of you may think this is controversial, considering I've got Carlton Barrett and Sly Dunbar at number 3 and 2 respectively. But as a musician, as a drummer, I spoke earlier on about personality and conveying your personality through your playing, through your music. Horsemouth puts his whole spirit into his playing. He's having fun when he plays, or you can feel his vibe through his playing. Again, one of those drummers that's possibly not classically trained, even though he is from the Alpha Boys school. In terms of his technique, it's not traditional, it's not orthodox. The way he holds his sticks, he will hold a stick sort of halfway down the stick, which prevents him from really beating the drum. So he's not a drum beater. He doesn't beat the drums, he plays the drums. And he almost holds the drum like a paintbrush. He doesn't whack the drums like where Sly would hit the drums really hard. Horsemouth will touch the drums. He'll touch the toms on that offbeat. Almost like an artist with a paintbrush. His hi-hat technique, again, not how you would teach a drummer how to play. So whereas you're taught to play with your wrist and be efficient, Horsemouth will have his whole shoulder going and digging into it. And that's what created his sound. But when you see him digging into that hi-hat, you can see the fun he's having and the groove that he's creating from that technique. his syncopation. He loves to dance on the rim shot dances, and it comes from like African drumming. His patterns come from African drumming. Very instrumental in the creation and development of the sound of reggae in the 70s, along with Carlton Barrett and Sly Dunbar. Leroy Horsemouth can be heard on most of the early Burning Spear albums, Mighty Diamond, and Inner Circle, and a host of other albums. Something fun that you can do, if you take the Mighty Diamonds album, Right Time, which was recorded featuring a host of different musicians, including Sly Dunbar and Leroy Horsemouth Wallace. Listen to all of the tracks and see if you can work out, see if you can tell by ear which tracks were performed by Sly and which ones were performed by Horsemouth. Easy to do when you know what to listen out for. As musicians, we all want to get better and improve as players, but sometimes we can be striving for the wrong things. What makes a great musician? Someone who knows all the theory, someone who's got all the skills, chops, someone that can play 100 miles an hour, fast solos, fast rolls, plays 100 beats, 100 notes when 10 will do? Or is it someone who can communicate emotion, thought, feeling, paint a picture with sound, make you want to dance? Is it someone who can tell a story? All the greatest recordings are memorable. The melodies are memorable, the grooves are memorable, how they make you feel is memorable. And that's what, as musicians, we need to strive to remember when we're communicating with the audience, rather than trying to impress fellow musicians. Are we telling a story? Are we communicating a picture? Is the sound coming across and telling a story? And that is what connects these three drummers together. They were able to serve the music while still being able to inject their character and sound into the music, knowing when to play, when not to play, how to assist the groove, or to make the groove, or control the groove, control energy. So if you're a drummer, maybe you can take some of these qualities into your playing. And if you're a bass player, get to know your drummer, because you're only as good as your drummer. Until next time, remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you think about my choice of 3 reggae drummers. Maybe put your alternative suggestions in the comments. Until then, little more. A wise man said to me once, as a bass player, you are only as good as your drummer. Dogs barking, just when I want to talk. I must get a studio. It's nice being out in the open, but sound, birds, crickets, people talking. Stop talking, I'm filming. Anyway, a wise man once said to me, as a bass player, oh fuck, say, dog, shut up. He's gonna come run over here, run around my tripod, and just be off. Go away, dog. You've got the whole of this park to be, you don't need to be here. As a bass player, how you interact musically, rhythmically, how you interact musically, shut up, how you interact musically and rhythmically, I can't say that word, rhythmically. Is it rhythmically or rhythmically? Whatever.